Season 3, Episode 2 of The White Lotus, Special Treatments, is out as we now see how these characters all begin to interconnect and weave together to eventually come to a head for the murder that we know is about to occur in the Thailand resort in about 2 weeks. Before we break down everything that happened in Episode 2, I laid out a White Lotus characters flowchart for Season 3 that I think the easiest way to do it is to break it down into 4 categories. There is the White Lotus staff, there's the couples, there's the white girls, and there's the Ratliff family. Those are the 4 big groups that we know are going to somehow all be connected and all come together and develop relationships before the big murder, and we see how this all comes to a head. Now, the White Lotus staff, to me, is almost like, on the whole, its own character. There's all these individuals that have their own story, but the staff, to me, is always like, there are these people who are just working this job and trying to do their best, and in comes these rich, fancy, drug-addicted, superficial, materialistic assholes who fuck their whole world up, and then the White Lotus staff is left there, like, picking up the pieces. They're there, like, waving on the shorelines, like, hello, and then, a couple weeks later, they're waving goodbye while there's a body bag and a fucking, somebody's dead, somebody's in jail, everything is a wreck. If you look at Season 1, Armand obviously ended up being drug addicted, shitting in a hotel room before being stabbed to death. You had Kai, who got roped into stealing Connie Britton's $75,000 necklace, and he ends up going to prison. In Season 2, there's Giuseppe, the piano player, who ends up getting the boot from his job because Lucia, that hooker who shows up at the hotel, she wants to play the music. They're always kind of like fucked up, fucked over, and we'll see how that maybe can apply in Season 3 as we learn more about them. So in this case, Season 3, the White Lotus staff, you have Belinda. She's the wellness expert that we met in Season 1. She's one of the few characters to carry over into multiple seasons. And she clearly has a little thing for Pornchai, who is another wellness expert at the White Lotus, where they give each other massages. Pornchai does his specialty treatment to Belinda, and then Belinda gives him hers. She can't, she stutters and stammers over her words. He says, would you like me on my back or on my stomach? And she's like, I'd like you on my stomach. So she clearly has a little thing for Pornchai. Also, we have Gaitak and Mook. And Gaitak takes Mook out to lunch and explains that he has feelings for her too. So there's 2 kind of crushes going on within the White Lotus staff, which can always make things messy and complicated. Then there's Valentine, who everybody else has a crush on. All the white girls want to fuck Valentine. He's like the gym trainer, great body, and everybody's kind of drooling over him. Then you have Pam, who is just trying to do her best with the Ratliff family, who, for all I know, might end up being the one murdered because if she tells Timothy to put his cell phone away one more time, I think he's going to fucking murder her. Then you have Fabian, who is like the main assistant to Shritala, who is the matriarch, if you will. She's the head of this whole White Lotus location, with her and her yet-to-be-revealed husband, Jim Hollinger. So Shritala and Jim Hollinger are at the top of this White Lotus pyramid. Then you have the couples. You have Greg, who he's the only person to be in all 3 seasons of White Lotus. We first met him as Gary, who was in Season 1 and 2. We'll talk more about him in a little bit. He is with Chloe, who we now believe might be a hooker from Dubai. And then there's Rick, played by Walton Goggins, who is just this horrendously depressed guy with a shady obsession with Shritala's husband, Jim Hollinger. He's clearly showing up to the White Lotus trying to find Jim Hollinger. He is with Chelsea, who is a sweetheart girl who is like so idealistic and naive, and she knows that's definitely something weird going on with Rick, but she loves him and she has a good heart and she lets him suck on her nipples. We'll talk about all of that in a minute. So those are the couples. Then you have the white girls. Jacqueline Lemon is the famous actress who is taking her 2 childhood friends on a trip to Thailand. One is Kate, who is kind of this middleman gossip who's talking about either girl, but she's kind of the one always talking about either side. And then there's Lori, played by Carrie Coon, who is one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite actors in the world, who is playing like the depressed mom, the depressed woman who doesn't have the great marriage or the great job, while her friends went on to, bigger and more glamorous lives. And then there's the Ratliffs, who are the most fucked up part of this whole season. You have Timothy Ratliff, the father, who we now are starting to learn that he is about to get pinched on some sort of big international shady financial dealings. Victoria is the zanied out mom who is so oblivious to the entire world. You have Saxon, the oldest son, who is a creepy sex addict. You got the middle daughter, Piper, who is clearly lying about something. And then you have the youngest son, Lachlan, who is just the confused young boy trying to make his way. So that's the setting. And those are the people that are all going to get mixed up in this fucked up White Lotus universe. Now, to go back to Belinda and Gary. Now, Belinda, if you remember, was in season 1 in the Hawaii location. She met Tanya, who is Jennifer Coolidge. Tanya is like the face of White Lotus. And in the first season, Tanya loves the way that she does her massage and her meditation and her treatment. And she's like, that was amazing. I want to invest in you. I'm going to give you money. You're going to open up your own chain. You're going to become this big thing. Belinda's like, oh my God, like my angel from heaven, my whole life just changed. And we end up learning that, Tanya just kind of said that on a whim because she's got so much money and she's so flighty and aloof and out there. And Belinda never ends up seeing that money or that investment and ends up losing faith in her entire mission as this wellness expert. Now, she's from season 1. Greg, we see, is now the boyfriend of this girl, Chloe. He is revealed to be Gary from seasons 1 and 2. Now, Gary, if you don't remember, was in season 1. Tanya met him at the Hawaii location where he said, I have a terminal disease. And he kind of sweeps her off her feet, and they have this romance that he's like, I don't have much time left, and she's just trying to get her groove back. And so they fall in love and they're fucking each other. And all the while, though, he's taking these weird phone calls and being very shady. And we see at the start of season 2, they are now married, and they're at the Italian resort together where they are not on great terms. They're fighting. He's mad that Tanya brought along Portia, played by Florence Pugh. He's mad that she brought her. He's talking about their prenup and how he doesn't have any money, so he has to work for the rest of his life. And he ends up being like, I got to go back to America because I don't have any money, and fuck you. So we know that they're on bad terms. Eventually, at the end of that season, we find out that Tanya meets up with Quentin, who is this flamboyant gay man who is partying with her on a yacht, and tells her this story of how he was once involved in this romance, this unrequited love with an American cowboy who didn't love him back because he was straight. And Tanya looks at a photo on the yacht and realizes that the man that Quentin is talking about is actually Gary, her husband. So we come to realize Quentin is this shady dude. He's fucking the younger guy, Jack, who he tells everyone is his nephew, but it's just a young guy who he's paying money to. He got him out of a bad situation in life, and now basically he's kind of like Quentin's sex slave. So Quentin is into some shady shit, and Tanya realizes that these guys are on this yacht, and they are going to kill her to attempt to steal her family fortune. And, this is believed to be all orchestrated by Quentin and Gary. Now, Gary is going by the name Greg in Thailand. Now, I believe on the surface, in the first look of episodes 1 and 2 of season 3, we're naturally thinking this is all after everything that happened in Italy. That Gary is now going under a different name. He has taken on this alias of Greg, and he has moved on to Thailand, where he's trying to hide out. And who knows exactly how things ended up finishing with Tanya and her murder. However, there is a theory bubbling online that this is all a prequel, which would kind of make a little more sense, in that Belinda, we see at the end of season 1, when Tanya does not invest in her, is completely giving up. She's throwing her plans in the trash, and she's kind of like, fuck this, I'm never going to make it. Whereas in this season, she seems to be still on her grind, trying to make it at the White Lotus. She's very motivated and still into it. And so if you think of it as this was her first stop along the way before meeting Tanya and, eventually giving up on her dreams, that could make sense. And you could imagine that Gary is this type of guy who's running these schemes and scams, and this is all before he met Tanya, and he's not necessarily on the run or trying to hide after her murder. So that's just something interesting that's being floated out there. I don't think there's enough proof one way or the other to say whether this is before or after the happenings of season 2. No reason necessarily to think that it's a prequel, but it could just be a curveball that they're throwing, which would be interesting if we find out that this is all pre-Tanya. So where do we begin on episode 3? The White Lotus staff, like I said, they kind of have their crushes on each other. We're going to see how that sort of unfolds. But to me, Walton Goggins as Rick is, I think, like the best, most intriguing character out of the entire White Lotus series. Now, I am super biased towards Walton Goggins. I think he is one of the greatest actors of all time. If you look at his catalog of TV shows, he is in some of the absolute best series of all time, and he always steals the show. He is so incredible, and I think on the surface, Rick is viewed as this like super shady, just awful, curmudgeon, shitty personality, shitty demeanor, and then you start to learn more about him when he's doing meditating with Amrita, where he's like, my mother was murdered, my father was gone, I never knew him, I got nothing, I have no emotions. He says, if there's no gas in the tank, the car doesn't run. You can't get nothing. You can't get anything out of nothing. You can't build nothing on nothing. So he is just an empty, broken, battered, beaten man. And you start to kind of sympathize with him when you realize his plight. Now, it's very clear the whole reason he's there in the White Lotus in Thailand is to find Jim Hollinger. He overhears Sritala saying that Jim is not here, and he gets all upset. He's like, fuck. Like, that's why I came here. Finds out that Jim is in Bangkok after overhearing Sritala talk to the white girls. And he says later that episode, I'm going to have to go to Bangkok for a couple nights. Now, again, we don't know enough details yet, but as Timothy Ratliff is dealing with his like financial business shady shit, I started to initially think maybe Rick is doing something similar. Another white man, bald white man in Thailand who is trying to make money, steal money, hide money, whatever. After coming to learn that his mother was murdered, my initial gut reaction was, what if Jim Hollinger is the guy who murdered Rick's mother, and he is now seeking some sort of revenge. I've seen a theory on Reddit that poses the idea that Jim Hollinger is actually Rick's father. Now, Jim Hollinger is played by Scott Glenn. He played Kevin Garvey Sr. in The Leftovers. If you're familiar with that show. And some people were pointing out that it could look enough like they could be father and son. And the reaction that Rick is having whenever he hears his name and the attempts that he's making to hunt him down could be that of, I'm, your long lost son, your secret son. Now my mother's dead and I want to reconnect with you or get revenge on you or whatever it may be. So whether it's the murder or father-son connection, we're slowly going to find out why Rick is so obsessed with hunting down Jim Hollinger. And to me, that might be the most intriguing part of the whole series, because I just can't get enough of Walton Goggins. And then there's Chelsea, who has the craziest fucking teeth in the world, but it's just like this idealistic girl who knows that Rick is like this asshole, but has a soft spot in her heart and is just trying to get him to go to therapy and trying to get him to better himself. And they kind of have this moment where it's very sweet and he's sitting on her lap. And then she proceeds to just dump him out in one of the more shocking sex scenes I've ever seen on television. Walton Goggins just straight up starts sucking on that titty. That was intense, man. As television has gotten, bigger and better and more glamorous, and streaming services have made them like the premier entertainment in the world today, all of it has gotten more aggressive, and they're not pulling any punches, and sex scenes have gotten crazier. But to just watch somebody straight up suck on a nipple, like a breastfeeding baby, That was crazy. I don't know if that was like a prosthetic or something. I know that they've done the fake prosthetic dicks with Theo James in previous seasons. I don't know if that was like a fake boob or a fake nipple, or if she just gave the green light and the intimacy coordinator said, go ahead, fuck it. And Walton was just like, let me suck on that nipple. But I was taken aback by that sex scene, which, you know, takes a lot for me. I feel like I've seen it all at this point. And, that to me ranks up there with some of the more aggressive sex scenes ever on television. There was the 69 in The Americans. There was the time that Phil Dunphy was giving it to his wife, giving her back shots underneath the blanket in Modern Family. But the boob sucking on White Lotus season 3, they always do something with the sex scenes and the weird sexual relationships to make you gasp and push the boundaries. So no surprise there. The White Girls. A great beginning and end, the bookend the episode of Jacqueline gossiping about Lori with Kate, saying how her job has stalled and she drinks too much and she's not getting along with her husband, and just perfectly written female convo dialogue. Like, that was the realest whispering and like backhanded compliments and, you know, saying terrible things about your friend, but then backing it up with like, but she's amazing, but I love her so much. And then we see at the end of the episode, it's the same thing happening, but this time it's Kate and Lori talking about Jacqueline, how she's gotten too much work done on her face and how they think that she's lying about how obsessed she is with her husband. If you watch the acting in that scene from Carrie Coon, who's a little bit drunk, and she's trying to whisper and trying to keep it low key, but she's also like, that's what I'm saying. When she says like, oh no, but she's great. She's like, oh, no, totally. I mean, the physical acting along with the whispering and the jealousy and the hating, but they're frenemies. I mean, that is female friendship wrapped up in a nutshell. Of course, stereotypically speaking. But that was, I thought, so subtle and so well done, the way that those girls were just tearing each other apart. Now, Kate has been kind of the linchpin. She talks with Jacqueline about Lori, and then she talks with Lori about Jacqueline. We have not yet to see if Jacqueline and Lori will be talking about Kate, or if Kate is kind of the two-face that floats between the two. But the dynamic in that friendship there is one that is very explosive. Like, I look at who could end up being the murderer and the murderer. The murdered and the murderer, right? Like, as far as the murderer goes, well, let's talk about the Ratliffs first, and then we'll talk about who I think the murderer might be. The White Girls, we see, are connected to the Ratliffs, as we're starting to see all the other connections where it's like there's Belinda and Greg, and Rick is after Jim, and everyone has these like little threads that connect them. We see that the White Girls are actually connected to the Ratliffs as they walk by, and Kate recognizes the mother, Victoria Ratliff, in a perfectly, just another perfect subtle scene in the White Lotus where Piper, the daughter, is talking about the White Lotus, saying that this is Disney World for rich bohemian women walking around in their Lululemon yoga pants. Literally, as she says it, Kate walks by the screen and turns and is like, oh my God, I recognize you. You're Victoria, right? We know so-and-so. We were at that baby shower a long time ago where we spent the weekend together. And Victoria Ratliff wants no part of this. She doesn't talk to her. She doesn't respond. She doesn't remember, or she does remember and does not like her. In a awkward, again, super real dialogue that makes you just want to like crawl out of your skin, where Kate's just trying to be nice and exchange pleasantries and say, I'll tell our friend you said hi. And Victoria's like, yeah, get the fuck out of here. To the point that her son Lachlan's like, why were you so rude? And she's like, who gives a fuck about her? I'm here with my family. And then she drops the line, actresses are just prostitutes anyway. So Victoria, who definitely has more going on. I mean, she is so drunk and zannied out at all times. Another great line from Victoria this episode was, when I'm getting a massage, I get stressed out. And she pops another pill. So she is truly one of a kind. And now, starting to feel like there's something there. Why is there resentment? Why does she not like Kate? What happened with these women? But we see yet again another little connection between all the different groups. Now, the Ratliffs, Timothy, one of the big pieces of this episode is Timothy finding out that he is implicated in some sort of financial scandal that the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal are about to go public with. where he finally gets in touch with Kenny Wynn, who is like, you're fucked, you're implicated, get a lawyer, it's all going down, it's all about to blow up. And as he's dealing with that, Victoria's completely oblivious. Piper finds out that her brothers have been talking about her sex life, specifically that Lachlan told her that Saxon said, it's weird that you're a virgin because you're so hot. And she's like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? Why are you talking about me like that? And I think it's still not even enough of a reaction. I think she needs to be like, fuck, you know, she kind of brings it up to Saxon, stop talking about my personal life. She needs to be like, hey, you sex addicted creep, why the fuck are you talking about how hot your sister is and whether she has sex? Absolute fucking weirdo, and so well done by Patrick Schwarzenegger. He is just detestable. His laugh, his jokes, you know, he drops the joke like, sex with someone in Thailand is like a box of chocolates. You never know which one's going to have nuts. And his mom's cackling. He says he doesn't like the massage because it didn't have a happy ending. After he lays down on the table, he's getting his shoulders rubbed and his dick's popping up through the sheet. Like, just a total sleazeball, creepy, make your skin crawl, sex addict loser. And just that laugh alone will make you just want to fucking crawl in a hole and die. So, and again, Lachlan is just trying to figure out his way in this whole thing. And we see him wake up in the morning and look at his older brother just laying there sleeping naked, ass crack out. And again, just looking at him kind of like in an attracted way, in an interested way, intrigued, you know, trying to learn, trying to find. It's just so fucking creepy. And again, adds to the possibility of like maybe that is somehow where things go awry in this, because I start to think about who could be the murdered person and who could be the murderer. On the surface, I think the obvious answers could be Rick chasing down Jim Hollinger. That was my thought. Some sort of revenge, some sort of they have some sort of beef, and it would be an easy dot to connect of this guy that he chased all the way around the world to Thailand. He ends up trying to kill somehow. You also have Timothy Ratliff, who is about to lose everything, and him sort of crashing out on everybody would make perfect sense. I wonder if there's a world where it's like Rick is trying to kill Jim Hollinger, but Timothy ends up being the one going on like a rampage. You know, like it started out with this 1-to-1. Like Rick is not he's not crazy. He just has this one issue he's trying to deal with, whereas Timothy could end up being like, give me that gun, and shoots up the whole hotel, because as we saw in that first scene with Zion when he's meditating, it's like gunshot, 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 gunshot. Like it's like somebody shooting up, like a mass shooting situation. So that makes me feel like it could be Timothy just finally losing it. But, you know, his wife is this pilled up, woman trying to keep up her own facade, who has her own resentments towards someone at the resort. Could be her. You've got Greg obviously has some sort of shady either past or future, depending on if there's a prequel or a sequel. We know that he has already tried to scam people. We know that he's already tried to plan murder plots. So he for sure could be a suspect. From the white girls, you know, you never know. It doesn't seem like any of them could be the murderer types, but there's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of gossip, there's a lot of backstabbing. I don't know how any of them would get a gun. And then on the cast, you know, there's a lot of different love stories, and you end up with love triangles and maybe some sort of deceit or betrayal. So they're starting to, you know, lay the foundation for any which way this could go down. You got a hooker from Dubai in Chloe, who she put Saxon in the crosshairs as he walks by. She says she thinks he's cute, even after Chelsea explains that he's a fucking asshole and comes from a family of wankers. And she's like, cute, because she is a hooker who just wants another mark. So all of these people are all shady enough, fucked up enough, shitty enough that they could be involved in the final blow up at the end of this season. I think my money is still going to be on Timothy or Rick. Timothy, Rick, or Greg are obviously in some order of 1, 2, and 3, the leaders in the clubhouse in my mind for the murder. But with new details coming out, new theories coming out. Is it a prequel? What's Rick's connection to Jim? We're starting to get into the real meat and potatoes of this season, where you can start to come up with your theories. You can start to draw your connections, and knowing how good White Lotus has been at connecting all these dots and weaving these characters in and out, I'm sure they will not disappoint again. So we'll see what happens next week on episode 3 as we continue to build to the big moment of the big shootout. We'll see you next week.